Today we have on the Colloquium Kelly and a group of people along with us, some of them coaches, some of them perhaps not. Kelly would introduce each one of them in turn. Just want to give you a little bit of a background in terms of how Kelly and I met. It was through Ramcharan. Many of you would know Ramcharan. He worked with Coacharya towards his coaching. We are still working towards his PCC. He's pretty much completed his ACC part of the coaching journey. And Ramcharan and I did a Create Your Future workshop a couple of months ago in Bangalore, maybe 3 odd months ago in Bangalore. He's been living in India on and off part of the year, going back to Boston, where he normally spends his time working. And as a part of the self-discovery, Create Your Future, and some of these kind of esoteric stuff, which we believe personally adds tremendous value to coaching, he introduced Scott and Kelly to me and to Coacharya. And what really attracted me tremendously about what they're doing is what they practice as equine coaching, working with horses and allowing that experience for people who spend time with them in their farm out in New Mexico to have truly a transpersonal and transformational experience. I haven't yet been there. I'm hoping that either this year or next year I'll certainly be there, and we want to do some programs together. But before that, we wanted to bring them over to introduce them to the Coacharya community. They would again be speaking in another colloquium later in October, because I think it is the subject that they are covering is something extremely powerful. And also they would be running a mastery webinar, which Magda would be announcing soon, probably from October, November, in that period, soon after the colloquium, where it's going to be a 30-hour webinar, which would provide ICF credential hours. And this is a part of the series where we are being a platform, as it were, to present people who have extraordinarily powerful ideas, transformational ideas about how coaching can be used in a truly spiritual sense, in a truly transformational and transpersonal sense. So without wasting too much of your time and that of Kelly and her panel, let me introduce Kelly to you, and for her to introduce the rest of them and start the conversation. Thank you.
I need to unmute. Thank you so much, Ram. I really appreciate that generous introduction. So yes, Equus does use, for people who come to us, we do use horses as part of our breakthrough learning approach. We call it the third thing, meaning you have a coach, you have a client, and a third thing that can be anything that we use that can facilitate breakthrough change for people. And our coaching panel that we had today are all coaches who have one third thing, a third thing that they use to uniquely approach their coaching relationship with their clients. And we're doing this panel discussion today just to celebrate the partnership in Equus and Coacharya and this 30-hour course that Ram talked about. We call it the Selfless Coach, and the trainers will be myself and Ramcharan, who's on the panel, and there are CEUs available. And one of the key themes in the course is presence, and so that's what we're going to spend time with today, is presence, coaching presence. We have 4 exceptional coaches who will speak with us and engage with us around their unique approach to coaching presence and their third thing that they bring into the coach and client relationship. Their bios are on the Coacharya website, so I won't go at length into the bios. You can look further if you like, but let me introduce to you my partner in business and in life, J. Scott Strachan. He is a founding partner in Equus, and he's also a coach. We also have Ramcharan, who is a certified coach and an Equus faculty member. Dan Weil, who is a coach, certified coach, and an Equus faculty member, and Rebekka Goldsmith, who is also a coach. So we are in really, really good company today. What we're going to do is listen from each of them for a few minutes, just about their particular approach. And I might ask them a couple of questions, and then we're going to open the floor to all of you, any questions that you want to ask. And if we have some time, we might even get to pull a few of you on the panel as well to share your experience. So, so with that, we'll start. And Scott, I'll start with you, if you wouldn't mind to just share with us about the way you bring coaching presence into your relationship with your clients.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I think the third thing that you mentioned is probably the best place to start. And here at Equus, we do a lot with nature-based wisdom, or wisdom inspired by nature. And so the third thing is, the horses really help to bring a lot of presence into the equation. It's a great third thing. What they do is they reflect back to those that are in the arena with them, everything that they are, except the story they tell themselves. And there's a deep, deep sense of presence that can be there. The invitation is created for a deep sense of presence when they're with the herd that we have, which is has no agenda, offers no judgment, and it creates an environment where people can start to tap back into the truest part of themselves. And in that, something that I've been working with lately, Kelly and I have been working, and I'm really passionate about, is something we're calling keystone leadership, and this is all kind of dovetailed off of, nature-based wisdom. It's dovetailed off of being around the herd of horses that we have here. And keystone leadership really is derived from keystone animals that are in nature. And those include animals like bison, wolves, even prairie dogs are keystone animals. And one of the things that I find so incredibly powerful about them is that wherever they are or wherever they're placed, they change their entire ecosystem. So 14 wolves went into Yellowstone National Park in 1995, and they changed the course of rivers. They brought back nearly extinct animals. They created a much healthier environment for deer, for elk. The forest got more healthy, more animals thrived there. And the point of this is keystone animals are, I have this fascination with them, but keystone leadership isn't possible without presence. And to get really present, to get really, the third thing, if you wish, if you'd like to call it, is what people have actually inside them that's covered over with layers upon layers upon layers of stories and things they've told themselves or things that they've learned about how to be a leader. And instead, it's time to disconnect to reconnect. It's time to peel back the layers to get to that pure essence of who it is that we really are, because we're all keystone leaders inside. And when we tap into that, there is great ease at walking this planet. And we're all leaders in some sense, whether it's families or in highly matrixed corporations. So that's where my passion lies, and that's the path that we're on right now.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks a lot. Ramcharan, I'd like to hear from you next.
Yeah. Hi, everybody, and hi, Kali. It's nice to see you here. So my third thing, and kind of what led me into the coaching journey is that I worked as a healer, a body worker, for a long time, and particularly there is a style of healing, craniosacral. Probably people have heard of it. Some may have experienced it. It's hard to sum up, but basically it is an osteopathic technique, which is, it doesn't use any force. It's very light touch. And it's really about, as a practitioner, creating a really subtle and sensitive field of listening so that it's completely non-directive. Within that field of listening, that automatically sets up a process in the client where they start to orient towards their essential health. And there are certain rhythms and ways of expressing that. As Scott was saying, it's, oftentimes like peeling back the layers that have been put on top of what people essentially are, we come to that place of ease and wellness. So this is exactly what craniosacral is about. And as I moved through the coaching journey, I found that a lot of the principles of craniosacral were pretty much directly applicable. And I think it helped me kind of very quickly take to coaching at a deeper level rather than just learning it step by step. But there were certain principles like one really being about, like I mentioned before, becoming a field of listening so that I am not personally present when I'm with the client, whether it's craniosacral or coaching. I don't have an agenda. I show up, and it's my experience again and again that just by holding a quality of presence and skillfully attuning to what my client is bringing and presenting, acknowledging it, working with it, their system has an inherent intelligence which automatically unfolds the way for them to deeper balance, deeper healing, whatever transformation that is required by that urge within them. So in craniosacral, we call it the inherent treatment plan, that when somebody contacts you, their system already knows everything that needs to be done. All you need to do is show up. So that, in a way, it's very simple. In a way, it is it's an ongoing journey with every client and every session, and it takes deep time, patience, a lot of study, a lot of dedication. And I think this is very true for coaching, obviously. There are other, principles which we practice and learn in craniosacral, which I won't really have time to go into here because it's a very extensive training. But when we do our longer course, there's a whole section on coaches as healers. That's going to be very much based on craniosacral and other healing principles. So I think I'll just stop there for now and say that it taught me listening in a very, very deep and essential way to connect my inner presence with the inner presence of the client. And that itself creates the conditions for health and positive transformation.
Thank you so much, Ramcharan. Dan, I'd like to hear from you.
Hi, everybody. So my third thing is branding. And it's kind of an odd word because people don't typically think of branding as something that people want to be coached around. And so what I've noticed about presence skills is that it really requires a lot of presence on a coach's part to do this balancing dance where you're coaching a person deeply around this topic of branding. And for clients who are new to the work of branding, they are usually in a problem-solving, solution-seeking mode, which can trigger my own consultant brain. And so I have to really self-manage very, very well in terms of, am I trying to solve this, or am I coaching the person through this and allowing them to take ownership of how they want their brand to be shaped. And it becomes difficult when clients are only focused on the solutions or wanting to be offered solutions. And it also becomes difficult when clients are resistant to the personal aspects of this work. They don't think it should be an internal thing. It should be more of an external thing. So there's this disconnect between the brand, which is external generally, it's generally thought of that way, and this internal thing of how you show up. And another way of saying this is when clients are not in positive relationship with what their own brand is. So the work that I do is strongly founded in clarifying first one's own values, purpose, mission, and all of that, and how that relates to the brand. And then what values, mission, purpose of mine align with the brand that I'm representing. So we can build brand confidence and align with that. So utilizing a coaching and leadership approach, I also have to show up to, and I also have to be present and allow myself to be, fully vulnerable. because it creates access and it demonstrates access points to clients so that they can relate to me as a coach, and in a way create a safe place and permission for them to do the same thing, and then begin to create those aligning bridges between that external and the internal self. So to best serve clients, I have to really self-manage my presence, my active listening skills, and my full curiosity. And there's definitely a strong skill set involved in listening, but it's also hearing and observing what aligns with what we co-create with clients, and how that shows up in verbal and written language, in body language, even micro expressions, and what others notice or experience about the client. So we get into some of that discussion. And to do this effectively, I have to be fully present and bring full curiosity, my own vulnerability, my own courage, and strong presence skills, and an ability to be comfortable in just being with a client. And it's a necessity when coaching branding. And so that's kind of my approach, is that I take, I work with clients to help them see beyond this external thing, have them look deeply, and have them look at what other people say and how they want to be represented.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you.
Sure.
I'll hand it over to Rebekka now.
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. My third thing is working with voice. And I also started first in the world of singing and the world of coaching and one-on-one singing and group singing. And I found that what happened in these places, these spaces, is that people's, the essence of who they were and the deeper questions about what they were feeling in the world, how they showed up in the world, were coming through in their voice and in the work that we were doing together just by making sound. And it drew me into a coaching practice, conscious coaching practice. I wanted to understand how I could really support people, even as I was working with them with voice. And what I grew to really understand is that voice is a connector. It's a connector from the internal life to the external. It's a connector from the heart to the head, or thinking and being and feeling. It's a connector from the me to the us. Even if we're just engaged in a conversation or we're doing group work, we're building community together. And I started to really understand the practical and the metaphoric value in looking at those things in relationship to one another. When I think about presence, the first thing I have to do is presence myself. I start my work before I'm with a client, and I do all of the things that I do with a client. I work first. So I start with sound. I sing to locate myself. Where am I in this moment, in this day? How am I feeling? I want to clear the clutter. I want to open my heart. I want to really make lots of space so that I can also have a field of deep listening and deep connection with whoever is showing up with me in that moment. And so I spend a lot of time just really, really getting myself grounded and very present. And then when I'm with a client, whether it's in person or on a computer, I will also use these same skills with them. So for me, deep principles that I work with are deep listening. Sound, it lets me understand how to listen better. It also gives me this ability to really appreciate and sit in silence. Music, if you just kept making sound and you didn't allow for pauses and silence, you wouldn't have the shape, you wouldn't have the ability to let things land, to sit. And that's where a lot of the magic happens, a lot of the insights come, a lot of the resource that people have inside of them. So available to them, that's where it comes. So really a commitment to listening. I'm a big fan of improvisation. I spend a lot of time improvising as well. And improvisation, that skill has really also informed the way I work with people. It's about being really attentive to what's happening right now, understanding that there are so many possibilities that can happen at any given moment, and we get to choose as we go along. It also like sort of takes away the preciousness of every moment and just lets us be engaged in the process of being really connected. And the other thing about it, I will say that I have really got a good understanding of is that I can have lots of great ideas and I can hear a client and I can feel something, and they're involved in their own experience and what insights. And if I hang on to that idea, that great thing that I think is going to help someone really move, I'm not really with them. So it's like, okay, things come up and I let them go. Things come up and I let them go. What's this moment calling for now? And the last thing I wanted to say is that there's this notion in music of returning to home. There's tension and there's release, and I play a lot inside of that as well. It's the tension, there's the harmony and the dissonance. And there's a desire to return home, and everyone has innately inside of them all the capacity already and the wisdom inside. And so how can I help and use sound and use music and use these incredible tools that come from this practice to help people return to their home of who they really are and to show up really alive in the world so their voice is really present and engaged in what they're doing, full capacity.
Thank you so much, Rebekka. That's great. Terrific. I'm so impressed with everybody's sort of take on presence and how they use their third thing. And I had planned to do some questions right away, but I think I'm going to open the floor to some questions from the audience first, just to let everybody else have any way they want to engage with our four gifted panelists. I'll just open the floor, Ram, to any questions that want to come to any of our panelists.
Yeah, I had asked for people to share what their questions are, and there are some which are coming up on the chat, and maybe at some point in time, we might want to get some of them onto the panel. What came up for me to kickstart this process with the rest of the audience as well, it is the first time I'm hearing of something called a third thing, which in some way is an enabler in the creation of that totally ineffable, intangible quality called presence and coaching. And I found it much easier for me to relate to the keystone aspect of what Scott said. In a sense, each one of us, if we become a keystone leader in that sense, we could effectively change the environment, the ecosystem, and which then means that we need to step out of that ego system that we are caught into a much larger, freer ecosystem. And this is what Otto Sharma says so beautifully in his whole concept of presencing and theory U and stuff like that. And coming from that point, I can completely relate that to the quality of presence. And what is that one thing, perhaps, which, depending upon who you are, for each person it could be different. For one person it was brand, for another person it was voice and stuff like that. And I was trying to think through as I was listening to you guys. And then for me, what came up was energy. What I use as a kind of a barometer, as it were, for me to measure what's really happening and am I truly be present in a conversation. And it's much easier to do in a one-on-one conversation, a lot more difficult to do in a group conversation, and it's much more critical to do in a group conversation because that is how you really understand whether the group is forming into a team or it's not forming. It's still disparate individuals who form the group. So that thing called energy in some way, be it part of the body, be it part of the mind, or a combination of both or something outside of either, that came up to me as the third thing. So that is just, I'm throwing it out here. So if you look at what is on the chat box, there are different people. Vijay has said it's minimalism for her. It could be in the sense of reducing to maximize, a very Zen concept. There's someone else who's also talked about the self as a brand and the awareness of the coachee's feelings and mind, what is happening in that interspace that is happening. Trace is talking about the wholeness and health. So I don't know, you can respond to some of these, or what I can also do is Trace would be able to add a lot of value to this. I will invite him to the panel, and perhaps he can put together his perspectives, and that can add value to the panel as well. Trace, with your permission. Yeah, there you are.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, Ram. I'm still waking up and having my coffee on the west coast of Canada here, so you'll have to let me catch up a little bit. First of all, I just want to say how grateful I am to be listening to everybody that's on this panel, because as I was listening to everybody's perspective, I was going, man, this is so great that all of these people are like-minded people that are creating a transformation in the world. This is awesome. I just was like, man, I'm so glad I joined this webinar. I had a bunch of things and I just pushed it off my desk and said, okay, let's go. So thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. I was taking notes madly as I was listening to each one of you on different things. So yeah, thanks for inviting me to be part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, so Trace, the question is, or you can wait till they answer this particular question. Shanaz, which was, for me, initially that was a question. How do you discover this thing called the third thing? Then I let go of my cognition, I let go of my thinking, and I imagine myself in a state where I'm working with a group and something was happening, and how do I discover myself there? What is it that I'm anchoring myself into? And that is what I used as a third thing. But I'm not quite sure whether that was a process that you guys used. So if the panel members can share that, and then perhaps after that, Trace can come in and talk about his third thing, because we don't want to be completely coming out from the outfield like I'm doing and say, hey, energy is my third thing, but it's got nothing to do with the third thing that you're really talking about.
Yeah, so Trace, go ahead. Go ahead, Trace.
No, it's okay, Kelly. I just was going to jump in there, but please, you lead this. I'll just listen for a minute.
Actually, I'd love to hear from you, but I'm curious what your third thing is.
Well, as I was listening to that, you know, for me, there's a term I use quite a bit in what I teach. It's called the conversation that has no words. And the conversation that has no words, for me, is something I've been listening to for a long time. And I know a lot of coaches and people that do this type of work can relate to that. There's this, and Ram's energy it's an energetic conversation that's going on underneath everything all the time. And the way that I interact with that as an individual is so crucial for this larger context of service to the individuals, the teams, the organizations that I serve. And all of that, you know, the conversation really happens inside of me in the areas where I find that that's really difficult to do. You know, that's where my growth edge is as a space holder. It's in those areas where I'm having a tough time listening, or I feel triggered in some way. That's where I've noticed that this conversation that has no words is developing me and drawing me into a deeper and deeper awareness so that I can be of service. So that would be my third thing.
I love that. I love that so much. I'm just finding myself becoming increasingly inspired just by this conversation that's emerging. I had no idea how it was going to go. And I'm just curious if anybody on the panelists, yourself included, Trace, since you're now on the team, you know, how did you, and anyone can speak up, how did you find your third thing? How did you find, because it seems to be a way that people deepen their presence, as Ram articulated. So anybody who wants to answer.
I'd love to answer. It's really interesting to me that it's called that you were calling it a third thing, because to me it feels like the first thing. And for me, I think it's a developing thing. And I feel like, Trace, you said something about it develops me. And there's something about doing the thing that I love, the thing that challenges me, the thing that keeps me coming back into life, the thing that makes me feel expanded, the thing I'm in, which is for me is voice and other experiential arts-based practices, but really voice. And being really engaged, like a lifelong engaged, curious learner about it. And so for me, it's been cultivating that and then connecting that to the way that I want to engage with people in the world. It's immediately relational. So I care deeply about community. I care deeply about human connection, and I care deeply about people being their best and most alive selves in this very, very short time that we have in the world. So for me, it's the first thing. And I want to keep cultivating that and drawing people in from the thing that feeds me.
Totally agree with Rebekka there. I would say that the third thing is something that for me it evolved out of my initial quest for what is important in life, which became a spiritual search, and then that turned into how can I bring this into form? How can I learn to relate to the total experience of being a human being, not just meditating on the formless, but bring it back into what are we doing here? What is this? That turned into working with hands-on healing work with people. So that coaching, when we come from a background like that, it becomes, I think, a very natural expression of who we are. And to reminds me of Dan's point about branding. We show up best as coaches when we're coming from our deepest authenticity about what is important to us in life, not because it's a job. And I think that's a very big difference to tap into that. Again, they talk about passion and purpose. So that is, it's the driver for us to show up as effective facilitators. I would say though, I just also wanted to touch on Ram's point before about energy being the third thing. I wouldn't say it like that. I think energy is all the things. Energy is the first thing, the second thing, the third thing, however many things. To take it to a slightly mystical perspective, in Hinduism, you could say it's all the dance of Shakti. There's one energy experiencing itself in all the forms, in all of us on the webinar, in whatever we're experiencing. So when we can go into that awareness of everything as energy, it becomes energy coaching energy. It's a very different dance of coaching and facilitating than being stuck in the personal stories of I'm a coach and you're actually that thing. So I feel like it ties everything together in a way. Energy is, it's again, I start to sound a little flaky, but energy is everything, and it's true. So.
Yeah, I want to build on all of this too, because for me, I think it found me. I think, I had kind of been resisting some of this work really, and Kelly and I have talked about this before, quite a lot, because I come from a corporate environment where advertising, marketing, design, web development, and all of that, and moved into coaching. And then the questions around branding and this deeper learning about who am I, who are we as an organization, kept coming up over and over and over again. So that energy that we're talking about, that's just there, that's part of us, that's just present, shows up, I think, naturally. And I also think, why are we calling it a third thing is one of the questions that I see here in this chat. And to me, it's a way of framing a conversation or leveraging a conversation. It's the thing that we can lean into that shows up in the moment for us as coaches. And so that's how it showed up for me. It just was like banging me over the head saying, you have to talk about this over and over again. And I even said to Kelly, I really don't want to talk about this all the time. And Kelly's like, but you obviously need to. So it shows up. It's pretty awesome.
Kelly and Scott, since you're remaining, I'd just like you to address one more question that came up. Rashmi has asked a question, why call it a third thing if it's essentially you? Then it's no longer the third thing. Coming back to what Ramcharan said, energy is everything. It's the first thing, second thing, third thing. So it would be useful for people who are trying to use this as a concept to further themselves in this quest. What is it that really represents that third thing? How do you arrive at it? And how perhaps from there can you move into a greater state of presence? If you guys could address that, that would be helpful.
I'll start and then I'll hand it over to Scott. You know, calling it a third thing is just a label to start a conversation and create context. In my experience, when people are coaching, sometimes they have an idea that to bring in a third thing like voice, like branding, like the concept of keystone leadership, somehow dilutes the coaching presence. And we're finding that actually it does quite the opposite. And when you harness the passion that's behind that, whether it be energy or voice or horses, that when that's harnessed, then it is all energy. And then the third thing disappears. So then we start to get into a kind of interesting spiritual speak where everything's a paradox. It's useful to lift up a third thing by way of conversation and to ignite conversation. And then it just sort of disappears into, as Ramcharan said, energy coaching itself. And then where's the coach and where's the client, you know? So and I'll hand it over to you, Scott. I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Thank you. I was challenged by the mute button there for a moment. You know, it's interesting because as I hear people say the third thing, it starts to become this far removed, this distant thing, something you pull off a shelf. And the third thing to me is more symbolic of the gateway that reflects the path back to our true selves. So if that's whatever it takes to remind us of who it is that we truly are when we stop telling ourselves stories, when we stop levying or foisting limiting beliefs on ourselves and get back to that. You know, we talked about horses and all of the things that you guys are saying, whether it's improv, which takes, you have to be present to do that, whether it's, you know, I loved what you said, Ram, about reducing to maximize. Dan talking about presence and being there and you have to listen. There's two different things. It's listening and then it's hearing at the same time. It's like, I think it's not about the horses here at Equus. It's about what they can teach, or maybe I should say remind us of, because they are all about energy. That's the conversation that they have. It's energetic and it's without judgment. And it's what's possible if we just tapped into what it is that we already have and start, instead of trying to go out and buy all these different things to make ourselves better because we're already quite perfect. You know, and truly like perfectly imperfect, but that's okay at the same time. So the energy is there. The third thing, I don't know. I think it's if there's too much focus based on that, it kind of takes us away from what it is that offers in the first place.
Thank you.
I think.
Ram,
sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Kelly, please. You finish. I'll.
Just, did we want to bring somebody else to have some sharing?
Yeah, I'm thinking of this because one of the things that just happened to me as I was listening to Scott and somebody else also pointed out, it was an amazing word, the gateway. At least in the Hindu-Buddhist concept, lives are gateways. There is no end, there is no beginning. You keep moving from one to another. And so you shift your presence, you change your lives as you change your clothes, for example. That's what the continuum of life is about. And there is concept of non-duality, which is possibly you can interpret that as a third thing, because it's not you, it's not the object, it's not the subject, not the object, but it's a third thing. You don't know what it is, but it's not connected to me. It's not either of these, it's a third thing. So from that sense, I can truly appreciate that use of the word gateway. But what then it brought me into much more powerfully when I was thinking about energy, I was not thinking about my energy. In fact, Trace can add a little bit more about what he talks about in OD terms and systemic terms about the awareness of self, the awareness of the other person, and the awareness between that person and another person, and awareness of the system. So if you look at it from an organizational development point of view, which is self, the other, and the system, the third thing becomes a system, for example, and it becomes extremely powerful. So you could do it in multiple ways. So I'd let Trace take over from here, and and I will also invite, he has disappeared. Yogesh was here. I was hoping to invite him, but he is not here. Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to say a couple of things because everything is so rich that people are sharing here. And one thing that's really important to me that I'm committed to is to realizing that this is the normal way of working. This is our birthright as human beings. And I love what Rebekka was saying earlier about dissonance in the musical score and how that invites us back home. Because for me, when I hear dissonance, that's an invitation and something energetically to work with that is asking for my development and my return home to myself. And that is a systemic conversation because I am a space holder, and what is happening is I'm actually being invited into this resonance that's happening through the dissonance. The dissonance serves a huge purpose. And, when I look at that, that's been the development. I mean, it's about listening to the pain really in a way that serves me and serves other people, because I really like what the scholar C.S. Lewis said about how pain can be God's megaphone getting our attention. And so for me, it doesn't become about a methodology or a strategy. It becomes about listening on a deep level to my own inside out conversation, that dissonance, that pain that is going on. And what I notice is that all of a sudden I'm just in the right place at the right time to work with the people, systems, teams that are also going through that and that are looking for a space of wholeness and healing. That really is what it becomes. And this is practical. What I find is in organizations and in teams, when we work in this way, the results that we get are so much more vibrant than when we're trying to push things in a direction. Once you work in this way, you can't go back. It's just ridiculous to work any other way. It just is. So thank you so much for everybody sharing this, because it gives me a lot of encouragement about what's going to happen as we continue to work in this way.
Okay. With your permission, Kelly, there's a comment here from Sven, I think. I'm going to invite that person over because I find the comment very interesting. If you see that the third thing is a dissonance, edge of chaos, edge of creativity, the space of possibility. I would really like someone here who thinks differently and perhaps challenge all of us on that. So I don't know how to pronounce the word, Svea. We are now invited into the panel, so we would like to hear from you. Thank you. What did you mean by what you wrote there about, I find it extremely interesting. I resonate with what you're saying, but I'm not quite sure what you're saying. So.
Hi, hello, it's evening and I realized I was sitting in an unpanelist spot. So let me move myself. Okay. To the light. I'm combining looking after a sick person with dinner with listening. So what came to my mind, it wasn't really something I was thinking, it just sort of popped up, was that dissonance is thought of as something often as negative. And for me, it immediately reminded me of the edge of chaos is thought of, oh, I don't want to be there, but it's actually the edge of creativity, spontaneity. So many of these, I think, ideas and concepts have taken on attributions, qualities, when in fact they are just what they are. We make them into, so that was what was happening as I heard the dissonance story. And I also thought of Sid Vicious and My Way versus Paul Potts singing My Way, and how musical dissonance is really in the ear of the beholder. So those were some of the things I was just aware of as I listened.
Brilliant. Over to you, Kelly, Scott, and others.
I'd love to jump on that. And can you tell me how to pronounce your name properly?
Sure, my name is Svea.
Svea. Well, I loved what you said, because really the paths we travel every day from the time we lift our head from pillow is about perspective. And we get to choose the meaning we assign words. We get to choose how it is that we look at something, like dissonance being the edge of chaos, or is it the precipice of possibility? So I love how you brought that forward. I also loved the symbolic part of how it is that you move from the darkness into the lightness as you spoke that.
Well, I have to say, it of course was orchestrated and well thought through and planned.
That's very, very good. That's what is called serendipity, or it might be organized serendipity. So that's really what happened. So the interesting point is, now that we have arrived at this point of the gateway, perhaps the polarities, the dissonance, dissonance doesn't mean dissonance, destructions would always mean creation. Without destruction, you cannot have creation. So many other things that come up. And therefore, for a coach, many of the coaches who are listening in, is there anything that you can offer that in order for you to deepen your presence, in what ways can you use this whole concept of the third thing, or whatever else you might want to call it?
I think that's over to you, Svea. He's asking.
No. I'm asking all of you. So I'm putting all of you in the spot, because yes, you presented a concept. Now, if as a part of the audience, I would like to know, how do I take that concept forward and enhance my own presence as a coach?
That's a great question. I think that, part of it is, the energy thing really important. And as I've worked with the horses, as I've done more research on, the keystone aspects of things, there's ease. When we're present, there's an ease. Trace, you mentioned being a space holder. And I love that comment, because truly it's a wholeness when we create a complete space for the client. And it's a modeling that we're doing as well. So I think one of the things that I do is I question, when I'm with someone, if when I can release any kind of judgment agenda and just lean more into compassion and curiosity. And probably the first thing at the top of my mind is, what do I want for this person instead of from them? And that keeps me in a place of presence as well. So I don't know whether that's completely answering your question or not.
Yeah, I can just add to that too, Scott. I really like what you said there, because I find that that's the same deal for me too, in the presence of other people. If I'm really honest with myself and with others, the fact is that I need to do my work first so that I can do my work and hold that space. I become like a lightning rod for the energy, but I do that, practically speaking, by being challenged with my own judgment, my prejudices, my complaints, my criticisms, those different areas where I feel overwhelmed or stressed out or whatever it might be. Those become the very cutting edge of my capacity builders, and where I actually can start to build more capacity for space. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate the, just real quickly on that, to button that up, is that it's, and what Svea said too about perspective, because the work we do on ourselves, part of that is removing the idea or thought process that vulnerability is weakness, and instead putting in its place how powerful it is. Because when we do that, what we're really doing is showing up for the client in a way that invites it from them. So.
Yeah, I love that you brought in vulnerability, Scott. And Trace, I really loved what you said and want to add on to that. For me personally, the coach that I am is shaped by the other 23 hours of my life on any day. And I aspire to be the best human I can be in terms of how much I can disappear from my own narratives and my own limiting beliefs and my own suffering. And becoming a coach has caused me to become way more honest and self-reflective, because I have to be that emptiness that shows up on a call. And that is sometimes very brutal, because the rest of my life sort of shows up to teach me places where I get stuck, where I over-identify, and where I fall into egoic structures. So I become very much a sort of servant to that disappearing, so that when I'm with a client, then there is no me here to interfere in the purity of the process.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, I mean, that's really beautifully put. In craniosacral, they talk to us about, that it is a practitioner-centered therapy. And, on the surface, that might seem like it is very much at odds with client centricity. But as we go deeper, and I think we all are very much in agreement on this, that it's our state as we show up, which is of value to our client. So practitioner centricity is a much, much deeper form of client centricity. As you can show up in yourself as a practitioner, as you said, not even being there, we talk about it as a neutral in craniosacral. Practitioner is completely neutral. That is, the story of self is put aside. One is not even showing up with the intention to help. One is simply presence. So rather than I am present, I am presence. And presence itself has very innate qualities of compassion, of intelligence, of drawing information from a bigger field, from a holistic field, that then sparks our intuition and can act as a very powerful mirror for our client's process.
So we have about, I would say, another 4 minutes of some discussion and questions, and then we're going to have to slowly wrap it up. So Ram, I'll lean into what you see there in your wizard chat room.
Yeah, a couple of people have commented. Honestly, when I heard you, that resonated extremely powerfully to me, especially the word that you use, the emptiness. And that is what, in our lexicon in Coacharya, we talk about the mindlessness or the no mind. So you are there, but you are the space holder, you are whatever it is, and you can't be that if you're full. You need to be empty, and that is all, which is why I keep arguing about the point that you need to be mindless rather than mindful, because then you are full. It resonates. That may not be the way the word is meant, but it can be that. So Vijay says very nicely there. She says, yeah, but then don't let that using that word of a third thing or whatever the label rob you of learnings that you might otherwise have. I think that's very important too, because many of these things, even the word presence, we keep talking about presence, does it in some way destroy the presence that we have in terms of trying to label it or whatever it is. So I just would leave it at that. So this pretty much, I think we have covered much of what has been said by the audience as well. Now, I think let the panel wrap up. We have about roughly 4 minutes.
Wonderful, Ram. Thank you. So I'll invite all of our panelists that are now, we've grown to now 6 panelists. If you could each just share one line that sort of sums up your take on this conversation, and then Ramcharan at the end, if you could just share a little bit about the course. So just one line each, and whoever wants to start.
I'll jump in there. The emptiness, I hear that, and it's like a play on the words, right, of mindful, mindless. And what I hear is that in the emptiness is great spaciousness that takes us from being present to being presence. So I loved what you said, Ramcharan, because that's the most we can be. for ourselves and our clients.
Yeah, I can pick up there, because for me, the phrase that went through my mind as I was listening was that presence is naturally transformational.
I will come back to the title of our course, which is Facilitating Essential Transformation Through Effortless Presence.
Rebekka or Dan?
Yeah, I'm deeply listening. I think for me, this notion that we're engaged in the process of being deeply connected to what is essential about us, and through that, really connecting to all of the life that's around us. Yeah.
I'm really deeply listening and taking this all in, and it's just really, really fantastic. And the thing that comes up for me is just the word presence. That's powerful.
I want to just add one thing, which is just to say that these are all ways in, this gateway notion, but anything that we talk about, it's the way in. And then from there, then it's just about the connection that we have in the space together.
Thank you, Rebekka. Do we still have Svea?
Yeah, sorry. A few things I'm just going to offer them, not try and understand them. I'm very reassured about the wisdom that lies in being humble, is one thing that I'm hearing this evening. For some reason, what also appeared in my mind was put on your own oxygen mask first before assisting other passengers, even children and old people. So I'm very aware that there's an extraordinary discipline in the take good care of yourself in order to be of spaciousness to others. And my gratitude of what I'm taking away is this notion of, in music we know this, but I need to remind myself regularly, the spaces are as significant as the notes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ramcharan, just a minute on the Selfless Coach course.
Yeah. Well, we're doing this course, I guess, starting end of October, beginning of November. We haven't set the exact date. I want to put a little Carl Rogers quote there, where he said that it's only when I know the reality of myself that I can enable my client to know their reality. So I think that's very much what this course is about. It's going to be a living experiential discovery kind of course. It's much more experientially leaning than it is theoretical, although Kelly and I are coming up with a lot of great theoretical resources. And we're going through so many aspects of presence, somatic aspects, field theory, non-dual presence, tantra, nervous system, trauma, coaching as healing, and taking it, even looking at various sacred traditions and what they say about presence. And it's really for coaches who want to, coaches, leaders, facilitators, healers who want to really experience deeper discovery and actually, come up with our own toolkit and not just tread the path already laid down by people who've done that, although we will be looking very much at that. But I think it'll be a really exciting group discovery process. And if it's anything like the energy we've had here today in this discussion, where I felt a real shift in everybody's energy, we could hardly talk at the end, that's the kind of living, vibrant, transformational quality that I envision this course having. So that's it for now, but there's a lot more coming.
Thank you, Ramcharan. I think you said it so well. So that, I'm just so grateful to everybody. It was really, I'm deeply touched by everybody's presence, felt profoundly across miles and miles and across technology. So thank you so much for, yes, for being a part of this today.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, all of you in the panel. It's been a great experience working with all of you today. Just one thing that we want to leave with all of you is that all of you who are listening in and future will be coming in, what we are aiming to do in Coacharya is to be just a platform where many of you can come and play your voice, play your violin, play your piano, whatever you want to do. And something which in some way relates to coaching. And that is really the great service that we think we can provide to coaches worldwide, also coaches who would like to promote their message. So that is in this space that we are bringing this webinars. Trace at a later point in time would be coming with. We are looking for more people. So please do, if you have something that you would like to showcase, that you would like to use us as a platform, we are here to help you and be your partner in this. Thanks a lot. Thank you all very, very much. And have a great day. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.